I somehow got into a conversation this week about the illusion of choice. And it seems to me that I heard references to the illusion of choice in one of the more recent weekly Savage Worlds hangouts, which are on Wednesdays, and you can see them on Disembowel's channel. And they're definitely worth watching whether you play Savage Worlds or not, I think. You may not agree with everything that everybody on the panel has to say, but one of the things I like about the panel is that each person is given the opportunity to express themselves, and disagreement can occur and be open and not be life-threatening, earth-shattering, or, of any kind of galactic import. It's, okay, thank you for expressing your opinion. This is my opinion, and let's move on to the next question. I mean, it's mature. Good God, on the internet, imagine. Anyway, the illusion of choice is, if you're not familiar with it, the illusion of choice is basically a game master in the normal course of play, whatever your playstyle happens to be, describing a situation where the characters, the players, through their characters, are going to have to make some kind of choice, any kind of choice. And the illusion part comes in where the game master has decided what the next scene is going to be, regardless of what was chosen. So, in a case of two doors leading to two different rooms, there's really only one room. It doesn't matter which door they pick. And if they open both doors, then we're splitting hairs. But the idea is that no matter what they choose, they get the game master's choice, not their choice. So this is a rallying cry by people who are strong proponents of player agency. It's also a rallying point for people who just find the idea itself, the technique itself, dishonest. And there are lots of different reasons to like this technique and dislike this technique. And without, real conversation, the overlap between these different perspectives can turn it into a point of contention or friction. And I'm not really sure that it needs to be. Just to be clear up front, using the illusion of choice, or palette shifting as it can be called, is not a technique I consider when I run games, even when I run a narrative game. It's not the way that my predilections or my biases flow. There are lots of reasons to do it, and I discovered that I don't like to do it by, of course, doing it. No, I did not also learn how to jump off bridges or get hit by cars using this method. I could tell from the beginning that this is something I didn't want to try, but this technique on the surface seems totally harmless, and that's kind of a funny way to describe a narrative technique. It's harmless. But, people have been harmed by having their freedom of choice, their agency, denied to them. And by harmed, they've lost their enjoyment of the game. So I thought I'd put this clip together to kind of express some ideas about the illusion of choice. This topic can also be found referred to as the quantum ogre, or more entertainingly as Schrodinger's ogre. But the idea is really the same. There are aspects of the title Quantum Ogre that I quite like, So when you open the door, the very act of being allowed into that room or being able to observe that room changes its nature. Whatever was initially, penciled in as having been there is swept aside, and you're given the ogre, or, whatever encounter was planned. And of course, for Schrodinger's ogre, opening the door, you don't know what you're going to find. It will either be this or that, decision A or decision B, and you can't possibly know until you decide to go through. And but the thing here is that it's not a live cat or a dead cat. It's your choice and not your choice. The thing with the Quantum Ogre is that you chose, to head to town rather than to heading deeper into the woods. But still, somehow that ogre's waiting for you on the trail into town, because the game master has decided that there's going to be an ogre encounter, or whatever. I'm not really that keen on using fantasy reference for every example, and it is kind of sad that fantasy is still considered to be the default example. So I'll try to avoid that for the rest of this clip. So the illusion of choice. It's kind of a negative title right there. But we get a lot of entertainment out of illusionist shows. We get a lot of entertainment about being distracted. But, of course, part of the argument against it is that you walk into those shows trying to see how you're going to be tricked. Whereas, in this case, if the illusion of choice as a technique is being used properly, you never know what happened. You come up to 2 doors on a space station, and you choose to go left. And the game master, for reasons of their own, rearranges the map, and the hallway to the right is now the hallway to the left. Whatever choice, whatever thinking process was there, be it arbitrary or planned, your choice was just an illusion. Now, why is this done? One of the primary reasons is to keep the story moving. So right there you can see that people who are not interested in shaping a story prior to contact with the players may be less interested in this. And by that I mean, the game master who says, I'm going to tell this kind of story. And they don't fudge dice, they're not railroading, but they do have this arc planned out. People who go into it with the world planned out and different agendas, but no story. This technique has much, almost no value. This technique might be employed by people for expediency. The session time is coming to an end. Right? People need to go, but we don't want to end on a flat note. So we think, let's end on a cliffhanger. But if they go right, if they make the decision to return to town, if they make the decision to interview one more person, then nothing interesting can possibly happen. These are all kind of dead ends. So we interject something interrupting or denying or removing their choice. One of the defenses about the illusion of choice is that the players will never know. Well, this isn't always true. A lot of stories are built around tropes or are familiar story structures, or you've pulled this trick before, or players make decisions. Players can make decisions for very astute reasons, or for reasons that are based in a very comprehensive understanding of your campaign world and the way that you run games. And this kind of player, the kind of player who objects to the use of the illusion of choice, who objects to encountering the Quantum Ogre, often they are the type that can see behind the curtain, that can see that you're doing something. Even if it's for meta reasons, they can see the pause written on your face as you consider how you're going to rearrange things. Sometimes the illusion of choice is a problem because the choice the group has made is a very clear signal that they're not interested in following the campaign trail that they're on. They've built up an understanding of their characters over the course of play that's telling them that they can't continue on in that direction anymore. They don't have sympathy with it. They don't have empathy with what they're supposed to be doing, and they want to do something else. They've lost enjoyment with it as players, or they can't connect to it as characters, and they have opted to turn in this direction when the pull of the story, the actions of the NPCs, the consequences of action, all of these things are sweeping them in one direction, and they consciously fight against that stream to go in another direction. Moving the plot points from where they are expected by the story to go, and moving them to where they've actually chosen to go, denies them the escape they're looking for, invalidates their choice, and strips them of agency. And it shouldn't be surprising, I think, to anybody that this would be unsatisfactory, that this would cause some players to be bored, disinterested, frustrated, choose to leave, or choose to start a discussion about agency to see if you, the game master, understand the concept of choice. Of course, lots of players just want to be entertained. There are so many different types of players. It's entirely possible that you can use this technique over and over and over and over again and alienate nobody for years and years and years and years until suddenly some guy sits in your game for 1 or 2 nights and says, "Whoa, man, I'm sorry, but I'm going to bow out because I thought this was a role-playing game. I thought I had some, I thought I ostensibly had some agency. But in your game, I don't." And you wonder, what's wrong with that guy? Why can't he just go with the flow? Why can't he just play? But from his point of view, from her point of view, from their point of view, they weren't playing. They were just supplying random snippets of dialogue while stuff happened around them. They kept choosing to go left, but dude, the story's to the right, so we're just going to move all that stuff on the right over there in front of you so that you don't get bored. Except that the very act of that bores them to tears or frustrates them to no end. Which brings us back, I suppose, to the chestnut. Talk to the players. But this is one of those areas where not every player is aware. Not every player can conceive that you would approach the game in a way that's different from how they've played. If you have people who came up in a very simulation-heavy environment and they move somewhere where everyone plays in a more narrative style, it's going to be difficult for them to find a game they enjoy. And they may not actually have the language to express why they're not happy. They may not realize that the dice are loaded to make them more successful than they're used to being, and it just feels like there's no challenge. They might be bothered by making so many meta decisions about their character, and they might be bothered by having to explain the inner life of their character rather than demonstrate their character through choices and have it be the burden of the observer to figure out what's going on in their character's head. There's a lot of different gaming cultures out there, and the friction over the illusion of choice is definitely one of those things which highlights the radically different perspectives that people can have in their different positions along the spectrum of gamers. Being open to these differences, being able to get, or at least try to get your head around that differing perspective, I think can only serve game masters. Dismissing different viewpoints out of hand or belittling a playstyle really doesn't help the person who's trying to join your game, and it certainly doesn't help your game. So, the illusion of choice. I'm sure that this will continue to be a topic for years and years and years to come. How important is agency to you? It's something to think about. How useful is this technique? What is the purpose of this technique? When should it be used? And when is it stealing from the players? These are things that need to be thought about, I feel, as you consciously choose to shape, change, build your game mastering skills. What do you think about the choice that is not a choice? Let's talk about it.